Hi guys, just back from the Amazon not too long ago, and I wanted to do a review of one of my favorite baits that I used while I was fishing on this last trip. The review is for Off Grid Baits, which is a small batch bait company based in California. Uh, the baits were made by a friend of mine, Mark Hines, who I guided while I was in Colombia fishing a couple years ago. So Mark, when I first went fishing with him, was kind of developing the design for the glide bait, and he had the Mark One, the first prototype of the bait, which he kind of hand carved, and he had a few different of the same model but slightly different, and he was testing to see which one worked the best on that trip, and then he was going to go back and get a mold made of the action that he liked the best. So I've got the finished product here that I'm going to show you guys. Got a couple of them. There's one right there. It's kind of the, I guess you'd call that pike cichlid or jacunda paint color. Got really cool paint colors on these things. Another one, this is like the sabalo or boca chica, which is a common bait fish that they've got in the Amazon. That's one of the cool things about the baits is he does them in, well, you can get them in any color. He paints the baits himself, but he does a lot of colors of baits that are there native to the region, because they don't really specialize when you buy baits from here in the colors of the bait fish there. So really cool thing. He's got colors like the Boca Chica, peacock bass color, the Jacunda color. Jacunda is another fish that comes in a bunch of different colors that you can get down there. So regionally, they might be red. They might be the color of that other bait. They might have different spots and stuff. So you can kind of custom do them to the colors that you want. There's a whole bunch of different bait fish that have all sorts of crazy Amazonian color schemes that he can put on those baits, which is pretty cool. And he can also do normal colors that you might find here, like fire tiger or ice perch or whatever. So the first bait that I really liked was the glide bait. Let me tell you a little bit about the size of the glide bait and how it fishes a little bit. There we go. You guys can see it's got a cool eyeball on there. Really cool paint scheme. The glide bait is 8 inches long. It weighs about 3.5 ounces, and it's a sinking bait. Doesn't float and sinks pretty quick, so you can kind of count it down to a depth, and then work it at that depth. It'll come up eventually, but you can count it down. In, let's say, some of the lagoons that might be a little bit deeper, you can let it sink for a few seconds and start the working it in from there. It has got a real hard cutting side to side action, darting like a underwater Zara spook kind of deal. And it works best on a tight line. So if you're casting this bait ahead of the boat as you're going forward, if your guide is paddling the boat or drifting with the current, you're going to have trouble catching up to the bait and making it zigzag. So with this bait, you want to kind of cast it at right angles to the boat and then work it back with the line under tension. And that you'll get the biggest, widest glide working it like that. And it's been a really good bait for me. I've caught a bunch of big peacock bass on it. And I'll put a couple pictures of the fish that I've caught on it in the video so you can see. Pretty easy bait to work. It's not super hard. Besides working it with the rod in that kind of motion, your typical glide bait motion, you can just use the reel and do a full turn, a full hard turn with the space in between, and that'll also make it cut. Not quite as wide, but still cut, fairly easy to use, and you can get it really going, chopping it like that really fast too, which when you get a fish following it, to kind of speed it up and really get it darting side to side will really make the fish come after it, and a lot of times strike it and actually get it so you can get the hooks on it. I've got kind of an unconventional hook setup that a buddy of mine, Joel, kind of showed me. I've got the treble on the front, and I've got the single on the back. And I really like that setup on my baits when I'm fishing in the Amazon. I don't like the double treble. I see sometimes that the back treble has a tendency to kind of swing up and get the fish on the outside of the face. And I don't want it to get hooked ever in the eye if I can avoid it. And that single almost never gets hooked like that. And usually the fish, if it's a big fish, it takes this whole thing in the mouth, and you'll either get it right in the corner of their mouth or just the treble. And I don't really think you need two trebles on there. And as far as the double singles are concerned, it's a little bit harder. in my opinion, to get the hookups with the double single. I know it's less likely for the fish to get off on the double single, but sometimes you miss a bunch of fish. So for me, the treble in the front, the single on the back is the best of both worlds. When I'm fishing these, I don't know if you guys can see, on there, I fish barbless. I don't use a barb on there. So you keep a tight line to the fish, and they almost never get off. Lost very, very few fish using that setup with the treble barbless and the single barbless on it. And that way, when those big fish come close to the boat and they're wiggling around, you're much less likely to get hooked while you're trying to unhook them or land them or whatever. This bait right here, you can see colors are kind of beat up a little bit over time. I've caught a bunch of big fish on it. I had to do a little bit of a repair right there myself and then re-clear coat it. That's not saying the paint jobs weren't great and durable, but I caught a bunch of fish on that other one. I caught a bunch of fish on this one. We're talking, fish anywhere from 10 to almost 20 pounds. And if you've ever caught peacock bass, they beat the crap out of your tackle. So the fact that they still look this good and the paint has lasted, it's only got a few chips in different spots, says something about the paint job. Are they only good for peacock bass? Absolutely not. I think they're good for muskie, pike, probably striped bass. Any big predator that likes that side-to-side motion will definitely be going after these baits. And like I said before, you can get them in any color. A couple other baits I wanted to talk about is he's got a twitch bait that he just came out with that we tested on this last trip. The twitch bait is 5 inches long and weighs about 1.4 ounces. This one's got fire tiger or kind of a bright perch pattern on there. I've got that same setup. I've got the treble on the front, the single on the back. And my first fish on this bait was a 15-pounder, and it didn't have a name yet. So he said I could pick up the name. So since it's not quite a twitch bait, not quite a jerk bait, I called it the twerk bait. So if you ask him about the twerk bait, he'll know exactly what you're talking about. I had a bunch of tacks on this bait, caught some fish on it. I really liked it. It's got a unique action. It floats at rest. It dives when you pull it. Sometimes it rolls. Sometimes it goes side to side. Sometimes it pops up at the top. So it's a super erratic action. Kind of can't predict which way it's going to go and how it's going to go through the water. And it really looks like a fleeing, scared bait fish. So it was pretty cool. I did have a couple of problems hooking up fish, which I found kind of weird towards the end of the trip. And I'm not sure if that was just the situation that where they bit it. I think they were coming at me, but man, I got some good strikes on it. I did land some good fish on it, but I was surprised that I had those couple of fish like come off where I couldn't get hooks in them. But I don't know, like I said, if that was just the way that the fish bit it or what, but it's not a gigantic lure. It should easily go in the fish's mouth. So I'll be looking forward to testing it out a little bit more and using it in the future. But I was satisfied and did like the bait, and I can recommend it. Also, he's got one of the best spinner baits that I've used for big fish. Now, it's not a crazy size spinner bait, which is good. You don't have to use a super big spinner bait for peacock bass or some big fish like muskie or pike. A lot of times pike will grab a smaller spinner bait, especially earlier in the year. He's got really beautiful skirts on this. This is a fire tiger or perch color skirt. And then he kind of puts a bunch of glitter in the blades that you can kind of see there, different patterns. Also, these spinners are rigged for big fish. You can see it's not rigged like a typical spinner bait where the line is just free moving on the shaft of the spinner. He's got it bent in a circle there so that the line stays in the eye of the spinnerbait. Also, on my suggestion, he put a zip tie around the skirt. So you're much less likely to get your skirt cut when you're fishing for muskie or pike, or you get a bite from a piranha or a dogtooth or payara or something like that in the Amazon. Your skirt's going to stay on there and it's going to last quite a bit longer. It's got the really cool eye design on there too. Looks like a snake eye or a viper eye or something, which is pretty cool. The one thing that I've had a problem with on these spinner baits is after you catch a bunch of fish I've had this section where the shaft connecting to the head becomes a little bit loose. Now, it doesn't affect the action on the spinnerbait at all, but it does affect like the cosmetics of the spinnerbait. You know, it doesn't look as good as when you started fishing it. But I think on the newer generations of the spinnerbait, he's going to coat this top head section in plastic, which will kind of avoid that lead widening out right there. I've got another one of the spinnerbaits right here, so you can see another color version of it. This one's like a red and yellow color version. Instead of the double willow, it's got the Indiana blade, I think is what it's called when you've got the single and the willow. Another beautiful skirt, beautifully painted head. It's got the cool eye, got the zip tie around it to help keep the skirt on there and help your spinnerbait last longer. It's got a really good hook. It's a monster. I think it's a Gamakatsu hook on there, but yeah, it's super solid. You're not going to bend out that hook on anything pretty much. And it's an underutilized bait in the Amazon for all sorts of stuff. And if you're using spinnerbaits for big fish anywhere, like let's say Wells catfish, muskie, barramundi, anything like that, you want to make sure you've got a big fish spinnerbait, just not a regular largemouth bass spinnerbait. Because I think with a regular largemouth bass spinnerbait, you're going to get smoked a lot of the time. It's going to open up on you, bend out, and you've got a chance of losing that fish. Prices, guys. I'm not sure the prices on the spinnerbait or the torque bait, but the price on the glide bait is super reasonable. I think he charges like 35 or 40 bucks for these glide baits. And compared to other guys that are making small batch baits where they're charging 100, 120, 140, 150, $200 for small batch baits like that, you know, that's crazy. These are super affordable, super durable, and that goes for the other baits that he's got as well. Definitely recommend it. The price point is perfect. Mark's a great fisherman. You can check him out on Instagram. Check out the bait channel. Check out a bunch of pictures of people who have caught big fish on his baits at offgrid_baits on Instagram. And give him a direct message, and I'm sure he'll hook you up with some really cool baits that you guys will be interested in. Enjoy the pictures that I'm going to attach to the video of some big fish that I caught on these baits. Probably going to put a big fish picture in the thumbnail. I got a number of really good ones, 15, 17, and then a bunch of 12s and other size fish like that. I mean, I don't really pay attention unless they're double digits, so definitely got a bunch of good ones. If you're going to the Amazon, highly recommend picking some of these up. If you like the video, subscribe, like, share. If you pick up some of these baits, let me know how you like them, what you think. I'm probably going to include a little video on the action of the baits going through the water so you can see, showing you just a little bit of the detail on the tail section right there. He puts in custom detail on each one. They're not all the same of the particular fish that he's painting it like. Yeah, so check them out. Let me know what you think. Thanks.